Hey now, welcome back to the Project Disco. This is the flip side of the card I just spent the episode 2 talking about, and I'm just gonna let the narrative of the cards guide me because I'm finding out that there's so much in that I've been thinking about Discovery over the years that it's all coming out at once, and I gotta let the narrative lead me, and then I can extemporaneously comment on things and where they should go. So yes, this is what I was talking about. The show opens with Dekuvma here discussing how to unite the planet and the Empire against the Federation, because this is what flips the ideas we have about what the Federation is from our U.S. perspective of, let's just call it whiteness, right? And in a way, what Dekuvma's doing here, minus the identity formation issues that are also something we deal with every day, reminds me of Eddington's view from a Maquis perspective that he brought into Deep Space Nine. So and then Eddington compares the Federation to the Borg, and it assimilates cultures and ideas just in a different way. And there's a lot to that. There's a point to be made that there. Do we lose our identity or whatever essence we had by becoming part of something greater? And how does that greater thing change because of the influence of all its groups? So I mean, you're confronted with the dilemma of, I mean, it's difficult to even get out, right? You're confronted with the dilemma: do we lose ourselves? It's those of us who might have an identity. The way I look, I don't, and identity often isn't something I have to think about every day because I'm in this current era that we live. I'm the standard. I don't have to look in the mirror and see what I'm not, right? I guess the older I get, I may have to, because then I'm faced with the being an older person. But besides is my bald head that somewhat goes against the grain. A little pun there. I'm not confronted every day by the thing that I'm not, because I'm the baseline. That's this identity formation. And so we see the Klingons bring. I mean, look at this Klingon. This is a new Klingon. It is very black Klingon, and he is discussing is the Klingon identity in the face of this very polite, what he sees as imperialism. So imperialism is the point I'm trying to get at. That's the Tukuvma speech. That's where the show begins, to problematize Federation imperialism, or at least put that on the table for us to reconsider, if only for the better, what it is the Federation is, what it is doing, and to take us out of that fictional world to look at ourselves. Who are we? What are we a part of? What may we be doing, and how can we understand that perspective and the consequences of choices made? So that's what we see with the opening of Discovery, and of course, then that is balanced against the conversation that Berman and Captain Georgiou have here. So there we go. And it's odd, and to further complicate this with another layer, who's having the conversation here? But two women who are not white in their representations of themselves. So we see the conversation with the idealism of the Federation here versus a complicated identity of Berman on a couple levels, because now we see that she is a human raised by Vulcans, but because of who Sonequa Martin Green is as an African American woman, there's a meta layer there that may not become a part of the Trek narrative, but it is a part of who we are now in this present time when we see this, right? So it does assume, so there's a difference here between race versus speciesism. So in the Federation, we have the Klingons. We have all these different species from planets, and then we have humans. All right, so the humans seem to be united, and so we seldom see race mentioned in Trek, except for the Bada Bing Bada Boom episode in Deep Space Nine, and of course the Benny Russell stuff, and that was the influence of Avery Brooks, and a very needed influence in that. But it does complicate the Trek narrative because of the internal rifts in between. And the problematic thing about Trek is, planets are stand-ins for countries, and there's only been a few representations of alien planets in Trek that were divided internally, unlike what we see in Earth all the time. It also reminds me of, out of all the things that are coming to my head right now, it's Galactica 1980, where Lauren Green shows up finally, and they're like, they have nation states? Are they divided? How are they not destroying themselves? This head over head with. Okay. So I'm not even done with this card yet. We're not even into the rest of the show, but I need to stop now because you can see how layered this is. Now, a lot of Trek's layered. I'm not denying this, but sometimes folks don't want to be confronted with this. It may not be palatable. There's some pushback. There's some zero-sum thinking, and a way to frame such uncomfortableness, and it's always going to be uncomfortable. All right, it's going to be uncomfortable for everything. There's an uncomfortableness in everything. Some people find this representation off-putting, and it should not be. But I'll leave that alone and complicate the show. But okay, so there we go. We haven't even got to the troublemaking yet. That's next. Whenever I feel like doing this, because this is going to be difficult. But I think it's worthwhile. I think it's worthwhile for everybody just to touch on stuff and talk about it. And I am pulling from some stuff I read too. I'm not just bringing this out in the ether, and I'll share those sources too whenever I bring them downstairs. All right.